Hey, all my Scorpio friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here with your September 2024 monthly horoscopes. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Scorpio, I'm referring to Scorpio as dictating the chart and being the first house. This is also applicable to Scorpio Sun and Scorpio Moon. And if you have 3 or more planets in the sign of Scorpio, this video is for you as well. When I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. The month starts with Uranus going retrograde. We see Uranus here in your 7th house of Taurus. It has been transiting that house since 2018 and will continue through 2025. Uranus represents sudden and unexpected events. There's a feeling of rebellion and of bucking authority, bucking the system, seeing a bigger picture of possibilities, looking to the future. It's very inventive. It rules technology and the World Wide Web. It rules the nervous system and large systems. It sits in the perspective of looking at the collective and humanity as a whole. Now, here we see that in your 7th house. The 7th house naturally rules your partnerships, both your intimate partnerships and your professional partnerships. It also rules the place where there is diplomacy and a sense of peace and a sense of harmony and cooperation. And then we rule that when we layer over that, the Taurus energy, which is Venusian by nature, and Venus naturally rules the 7th house. So we're seeing a creativity here. We're seeing a sense of wanting to find, to experience things in your 7th house in a way that is predictable, that is dependable, that is reliable. And it can sometimes bring a sense of routine here. Now, the routine is going to be mucked up by Uranus. So whatever has been stagnant in your 7th house, whether it's been a sense of partnership, a sense of peace, a sense of cooperation, Uranus has been revisiting that and offering renovations. Now we see that Uranus is making a long-term, years and years, 5 or 6 years, I think it is, conversation with Pluto and Neptune. This is a favorable conversation that's going to unearth the whatever's sitting underneath the surface that is holding you back is going to be brought to the surface in ways that are life-changing. They're altering on a big level. And here it very much feels like a psychological level, no more escaping, but rather connecting with the divinity within you in order to foster this new awareness of what you want in your friendships, your partnerships. And when I say friendships, the 7th house is a very social house. So it can be where, a couple interacts with other couples, where you go and you have dinners together. I'm representing sort of a wide possibilities of what can be going on here, but whatever it is, it's changing the landscape, it's changing the scenery. And this is evidenced further by this square to the moon, which is going to move rather quickly, but even more so to Mercury. Mercury has just come out of retrograde. It is in your 10th house of career, of public status, and in this opposition to your 7th house of both personal and professional partnerships. Mercury has been the focal point now. It will be 3 times in a couple of days where Mercury's been a focal point. When it hits 0 degrees of Virgo, it's going to create a yod with Neptune and Pluto. A yod is called the finger of God. It creates a focal point of awareness. And this is going to be the old story, your childhood, the people you hang out with, your teammates, your workmates, your daily routine is somehow going to change. And it could be through unexpected events, or events that have been lying under the surface that erupt unexpectedly. So there could be a ramp up of some kind. The month starts off with a real bang. We also have Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn later in the evening. It happens about 6 p.m. Pacific time. And this is going to be the last time for 84 years that Pluto will re-enter Capricorn, and Capricorn by nature rules authority. It rules a sense of government and the things that the rules and structures that are above our everyday lives that we live within. You know, we could call it our civic, um, our communities, the way our communities interact and the habits there, and our governments and the city governments and even school governments, anything that is a traditional old structure that is dictates on some level. This is going to get broken up. Now we see this is your third house. The third house rules the neighborhood. It's naturally ruled by Gemini. So there's naturally movement, daily movement. There's thought there. There's our communications there. There's the media there. There's journalism, the news. This is all the third house. Now we overlay the Capricorn energy of government, duty, history, repression, limitation, restriction due to obligation and responsibilities. This is going to get broken up a bit. It's going to revisit whatever has been laying, I guess I want to say, in the nooks and the crannies of your mind, in how you're speaking, in how you're perceiving. You know, Pluto is your ruling planet, Scorpio. And by nature, I believe Scorpio is the most intuitive sign because you're not burdened by the insecurity sometimes of Pisces or the needing to take care of others by Cancer. You know, you rule power and control. And in doing so, you can be very aware of other people's psychology and in some ways how to manipulate that psychology. But here you're working on your own. Here you're looking at Capricorn again is your third house. The third house rules communication, the self-talk, and it also rules that early childhood experience that shapes how we think and how we speak. It piggybacks Taurus because Taurus rules it from the home. And then we take those perceptions and we take them onto the schoolyard and into our education. So in the third house. So we're breaking up something, and it could be long-standing things that you have believed that just no longer serve you or are not even really applicable anymore. We also see on this day that Venus is in her rulership. Libra is your 12th house, the house that sits behind you, the house that in some places we can feel invisible. We can feel a sense of loneliness. It's where we spend time alone in meditation, in sleep time, and sometimes where we're sequestered. And this is the sign of partnership and very social. So there could be something going on where you're feeling a bit of transformation or feeling the winds of change about how you perceive your feminine energy, the women in your life, how you receive money, these are all relationships. Now, I want to say this too. Venus has been going over the supergalactic center at the end of July, and she's still within orb of it. It's 2 degrees, 22 minutes of Libra. And this is where we're creating a relationship with ourself that then we move into the relationships with other people. And through that relationship with self, it determines the health of those other relationships. Your transformation is supporting that. And this 12th house becomes a very spiritual house. It becomes a house that gives you opportunity to see the divinity in the disruptions and how the illumination takes you forward into a more aligned version of the earthly experience that you want to have. I think this is very powerful. Now we see that Pluto's in this blind side, this quincunx over here to I'm sorry, the moon, but I was really thinking of Mercury. I was thinking that was making it to Mercury. It's not quite the quincunx yet, but pretty soon what we're going to be seeing is Mercury is that everyday mind, and Pluto is that deep psychological part of us that makes decisions that we don't know about that affect our everyday life. This is coming up for the third time. I hate to be repetitive, but it is. And also we see that Mars is making an aspect here to Pluto that's pretty challenging because we're looking at Gemini ruling your 8th house of transformation, your natural home. So this is really addressing the mind again, being brave in many ways to look at how I think. And if we look at the aspects right now, each one of these planets is at a degree that reduces down to a 1. Pluto reduces down to an 11. Neptune reduces down to an 11. This is the master number of thought, retrograding, giving me review and opportunities. We have Pisces being your 5th house of romance. I think a lot of this has to do with your relationships. It could be creativity and putting yourself out there, but I think it has more to do with interaction. Then we see Mars and the moon at this moment at 28 degrees, which reduces down to that 10. So this is really, and we see the moon is in the sign of romance. We've got a lot of focus on breaking up old things that might not exactly be at the top of your awareness, but you can feel them sort of sitting underneath you. And as you relax into it, I think you'll start to feel Venus's benefit here. Venus making this trine to Pluto. Now, this is just the first day. Let's go to the new moon on the 2nd, which is at 6:55 p.m. Pacific time. And we see the theme of the ones again. This is an 11-degree Virgo new moon. This is where the sun and the moon come together in the dark of night to create something new. And I think this is really powerful because Virgo is your 11th house of hopes, of dreams, of innovation, of moving the story forward. And this is in also a house that is mercurial, that is full of thought and process. And here we have these numbers of 11. I believe you're planting the seeds, Scorpio, for really digging deep into your awareness of how you think. So let's just say that you've been singing a song that says, you know, I'm not very lucky in my jobs. I don't seem to get a lot of movement. That story, every time you put a my or an I am or any phraseology that indicates ownership, you're creating a momentum. And this feels like I'm creating a momentum, planting the seeds to have an awareness of how I think so that I can start to build a stronger structure that is not fear-based, that starts to transform my fears from anchoring me into something I don't want, into empowering me into what I do want. And when I say that, I can't help but think of dreamy things like people who are brave enough to put themselves in a situation to test their capabilities, to put, like, if you love to cook and you go on a cooking show, or you put yourself on a platform and you start stretching your skills, somewhere here there's an opportunity. And I really think this is dictated so much by your 7th house of Taurus and that Uranus, of opening the space up for you to feel a sense of cooperation and ease and peace and harmony within a creative dynamic for yourself that then you take into your relationships that supports them in a more long-term way. So this new moon is about planting the seeds of thought. We see when we click on the moon, the only aspect it really is making is to Saturn. Where do my fears, where do I let my obligations, or where do I feel a sense of dryness, and history? Both Saturn and Pisces rule history and long-term history. Saturn rules history of the earth and Pisces rules the history of the soul. So here you're planting the seeds to rewrite that history. And if we look at the 16, it reduces down to a 7. This happens to be at 25 minutes, which reduces down to a 7, which goes back to the 7th house, which is where Uranus is offering you liberation from some old story, the 2.0 version, the broader version that opens you up to feeling that sense of power and control that that Scorpio is so good at, and yet still being able to have that sense of peace and harmony about it. It almost feels as if there's a bit of a polarization that's fading out, and a more cooperative integration is coming in for you here. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's go now to the 4th, when we'll see. I'm going to move this back, I think, to 12 o'clock. And then if we go to the 4th, Mars should have moved into Cancer. I think I was should have stayed at 6, maybe we'll try 4 p.m. And we see that Mars has moved into Cancer. This is an interesting energy because Mars is your co-ruling planet. Again, it is in this quincunx to your ruling planet. This quincunx is a blind spot for me. It's that weird, haunting knowing something's coming around the corner, but I can't see it with any of my physical senses. None of my earthly skills will take me there. I have to go dig deep to feel it rather than to try to see it. And as Mars moves into Cancer, it moves into a sign that's very emotional and very nurturing and very focused on others. And Mars is focused on the self. So this is where Mars goes into its fall, into the opposite sign of where it's exalted. And it's got to slow itself down. Now, I think about the idea of fire and water creating steam. And while that can blow the top off of a pot, it also fuels an engine to move forward. And these are the choices that you get to make right now. Cancer is your 9th house of moving into new philosophies, new ideologies, and then layering this intuitive Cancer energy, because all the water signs will be intuitive. All the signs are intuitive, but some are more predisposed to be at it naturally. It just comes naturally. So I think that this is a challenging time the next couple of months as Mars traverses this house. And at the same time, with some awareness, we can use that steam to move the engine forward. So if somebody makes you hot, pisses you off, or sets you up, to an old behavior, or you feel that way, you can delineate more succinctly now and use this 7th house energy to renovate and innovate and create more peace and harmony for yourself. And all of this, for some of you, may be layered into relationships. And some of it may be just an interior job where you're dealing with the relationship that you have with yourself. Let's go to the 9th of September. And now we see Mercury has re-entered Virgo. Now, this is something that I think is really powerful. This is the 3rd time that Mercury has had this conversation with Pluto, your ruling planet, and Neptune. Again, Capricorn is your 3rd house and Pisces is your 5th house. The 5th house is very much about the self. It's about self-expression, creativity, fun, and enjoyment. And it feels very much as if Mercury's mind has started to, it's almost like the Mercury part of you has started to be aware of the duality of the mind, because Mercury is not only the ruler of Virgo, it is exalted in Virgo. So it's more powerful here than it is in Gemini. And this is the 3rd time. So we went, we reviewed, and now we're back to start the process and the implementation. And this focal point to me is saying, that Mercury is aware that some things I cannot see with my eyes, that I can only feel these things, and trying to blow the fog out or trying to control the situation is not going to work. This is indicated. The moon is very quick, but the moon is here indicating fighting with my emotions, which is really more echoed here in the Pluto energy for me, that psychological imprint that stokes my fears or makes me feel like I need to do something that is counter to what I want. Now we have Uranus again, mucking things up, saying, are you going to go with what happens in an everyday world and continue to focus on that and worry about that or fret about what has been, or will you move into the future with not only your mind, but your self-talk? It's even interesting to see 27, 28, 29. There's a opportunity here through your bravery to go into those emotions and to, kind of almost look at Scorpio and say, what am I focusing in on? And is it really focusing where I want to go or where I've been? And if I'm focusing on where I've been, I could become more irritated, more aggravated. And yet the knowledge of that can pull me into a whole new area, but you can't see it. You got to feel it. So this is a real interesting time for Mercury's transit here. This few days can be very powerful in its epiphanies. That's what I think is being offered. Now we go to the 17th, where we have the second eclipse season of the year. And this is going to be a partial lunar eclipse in Pisces at 25 degrees. It's at 7:34 p.m. And we see here that the moon and the sun are in an opposition, but we have the moon conjunct Neptune. And this is very powerful for intuitive knowing. It's also very powerful for wanting to escape to somewhere else, meaning anywhere else, on a desert island, to get in the car and just want to be left alone, drive away. This is a very, very interesting full moon. And, I want to offer it this way because being in Pisces, in the house that it represents your sense of creation, your sense of enjoyment, your sense of romance and pleasure, I think that this is an important time to almost kind of, the intense and brooding side of Scorpio can throw yourself under the bus. Too much focus on that, but your willingness to transform. And this is not a willingness to say, oh, let me go from point A to point B. It's just this moment of awareness that says, am I in my story, in my history, or can I take just a minute to think outside the box? Maybe something new is possible. Maybe there is something that I haven't seen and I can only really feel it. Right now, during this partial eclipse, lunar eclipse, Venus is on the voice of angels. That's the fixed star Spica. And again, Libra is your 12th house. So this is an opportunity to feel the divinity within you about your romantic life, your creative life, your sense of enjoyment and fun and pleasure. This is not a thinking time, Scorpio. This is kind of what do they call it? A come to Jesus moment, because, Neptune could represent Jesus, but also just, what am I focused on with my thoughts? There's just so much. There's going to be sort of this, on one hand, something feels physically obvious because the sextile to Uranus brings in an unexpected event or something maybe I even recognize or realize. But this moment here with Venus, this is really where there's something more aligned, an opportunity. So if something inadvertently seems to go away, or in this illumination, there's a completion of something, then what you can't see is what's about to replace it can be so much better. But part of that is your willingness to relinquish power or relinquish control of the mind and go into the heart. I like to call these moments divine disruptions. And we're going to have a lot of those as the year progresses. And the more prepared we are to be flexible in our beliefs, in our story. So we have a couple things going on the 22nd. Venus is going to move into Scorpio and Sun will move into Libra. I'm going to move a little later in the day. I tried 10 p.m. Yes, there we go. So here the Sun, as it enters Libra, goes into its fall. Libra is the opposite sign of Aries, and the Sun is exalted in Aries. So we're having this again, just like Mars was in fall. There's a feeling of not, I didn't say this before, but there could be a feeling of not feeling respected, valued, heard, taken seriously, and ignored. And here, this could be your ambition, your drive, your sense of ego. And then we have Venus moving into her detriment. She's in the opposite side of her rulership, and that's where she's going to feel a sense of being out of control. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. There's a lack of ease here. There's a sense that things don't work out the way that she wants them to, and sometimes she overcompensates. Now, I didn't mention this before, but I'm gonna go back there because, Cancer is your 9th house of belief. So here, Mars being in its fall, there is that steam that I was talking about can be created because if Mars tries to act and be pushy here, it's not going to fly. This is where Mars has to get to slow down a little bit and start to think about how other people feel when he expresses himself or when he is interacting with other people. The ninth house rules business, it rules marketing, branding, influencing, writing, publishing. So there's a lot of layers in here, not just foreign travel and beliefs and ideologies and religion. So we've got 3 planets that are all in a challenging dynamic. And part of that dynamic, I believe, is allowing us to slow down enough to take advantage of the awarenesses. Sorry, I don't know what happened here. The awarenesses that Pluto is offering as it goes back into Capricorn, your 3rd house of thought, of speech, self-talk. And then as it makes this trine over to Uranus in your 7th house. And the opposition to Pluto is, the illusion of not being good enough, the illusion that things are never going to change, the illusion that, this is the shadow side of Neptune in Pisces, is it rules madness, literally mental hospitals where we feel so alone that we can't imagine the pain ever stopping. And yet this is again an opportunity to stop looking at what you see with your eyes and then more focus on what you can feel with your heart, and asking your oversoul, the deeper part of you, where can I bring the meaning into this? How do I bring, and I think it could be through creativity. There are musical artists that have built all their creativity over their pain for eons. Now I want to offer this too, because the sun is moving, it's in connection and conjunction with the supergalactic center at 2 degrees, 22 minutes of Libra. This point in the Shapley cluster is about a relationship with the self. And as the health of that relationship is taken into our relationships with others. And I think this is really powerful, because this relationship with how much do I care about what other people think? Am I more focused on the audience's reaction to what I have, or my own sense of self and amusing or entertaining or pleasing myself creatively? Because that, as you please yourself creatively, or however that plays out, you also draw in through the laws of attraction those that will support that. And I think this is evidenced by, the innovation that Uranus offers. So this is pretty fly, actually, I think. Now we have Venus. Venus is over here having a rough time because she's feeling that she's not seeing, or she can't grasp what Neptune's offering. It's like it's sitting underneath, but there's no hardcore evidence. And part of that could be reflected in the dynamics or creating, if there's something that's being destroyed or renovated or is not working, whatever Pluto's breaking down in your 3rd house of thought, because it could break down certain relationships, work dynamics, teammates, because it's not serving the bigger picture. And you can't see that right now because something is being built that you've been wanting. I remember years ago when I first was like certified as a Reiki master and getting those more higher levels of education with my spiritual teachings, that a lot of things in my everyday life broke down and it freaked me out. And I lost my job. I mean, I went into a little bit of a crisis. I'm not saying that this is a crisis, but it very well could be. And I think it's as Venus moves into your 1st house, okay, forgot to mention that, this is an opportunity to really see your self-worth, to actually review how you take in money. How is your balance and alignment with resources and other people? Your house is riddled with interaction with other people, but other people and their resources, which make these very intense and transformational relationships. And as Venus gets to 2 degrees of Scorpio, she now gets to a point called the Shapley attractor. And any planets in your natal chart within 5 to 12 degrees of 2 degrees Scorpio are influenced by this Shapley attractor. The tighter the orb, the more the influence. Now, this is a point where we're releasing false attachments. This is a point where whatever is not aligned to our deeper truth will be detonated and be destroyed on some level so that it can be rebuilt and rebirthed. And these also are points that reveal the psychological dynamic with which we make our decisions, those choices that are sometimes life-changing, and yet they're not authentic because there's some gap between the heart and a need for security. So this is a really powerful time as we get to that last week of, well, and as Venus moves through your first house. So I think that mindfulness of that would be super helpful. Meaning, when you know what the stars are doing and then you start to feel the emotional reaction, it can give you a bit of solace to know this will pass and I'll just go into that reflective state, even if it isn't easy. All right, let's go to the 26th, where Mercury has entered Libra. Sweet talking Mercury. When it enters Libra, I really think that Mercury is kind of communicates at its best. You know, it seems to be very aware of the other side of the fence and how to be engaging. But we also see that Mercury is approaching that supergalactic center. So thoughts of self, this whole little conversation between the South Node, the Sun, and Mercury in your 12th house is literally having a conversation about what do I want for my future and how do I want to shine rather than feeling invisible. And while the Sun is, you know, the reason the Sun, I think, is in fall is because the partnership sign of Libra wants to shine their light on their partner. And when we're in Aries, it's all about the me and the self. But here, I think this is about the partnership with your divinity. This is your 12th house. This is the partnership with your story, conjunct the South Node, which is a point that is a karmic point. It's a habitual point of thought, of thinking that the soul does lifetime after lifetime, and it's up for transformation. And the remedy for overcompensation of others is to focus on the self. So this is really pretty spectacular for you, meaning in the awareness of this can really bring forth and support all these other beautiful blue lines we see at the time of the end of the month, these trines and these sextiles. Okay, now let's go to the last day of the month. And we see that the energies have really kind of calmed down. We always will have an opposition of the nodes. That's pretty standard fare. We see that probably the most challenging dynamic would be your 11th house. The moon is sitting here making a quincunx to Chiron in your 6th house, of work, of service to others, of your health and your pets. And I think that this is important because, again, we're looking at how you're perceiving your hopes and your dreams. And this quincunx to Chiron, you know, things can be changing and you're not aware of them. You're not seeing the innovation, because I don't think you're supposed to see it. I think you're supposed to feel it. So this is why broad thinking and very high-minded Jupiter is making a challenging aspect to the moon. And the moon is not necessarily, well, the moon I don't even think has a place to be in fall. It is challenged here because of logic dictates over in the Virgo energy, and the moon here is trying to make reason of emotions. And sometimes that's just really often, every time, that's not possible. So the overall, though, we have a very nice end of the month. Saturn is making beautiful aspect here to Mars. So now I feel like there's some wisdom being implemented. This is where the initial feeling of not feeling respected, because when Mars moves into Cancer, Cancer will look down at Mars being harsh, okay, or being too abrasive, or being too quick to move and not considering someone else's feelings. But sometimes putting a little bit of discipline in a situation is actually helping someone come into balance. So Mars is getting a nice aspect here. Mars is exalted inside of Capricorn, and Saturn rules Capricorn. So this feels nice. And then Venus is starting to get her sea legs a little bit here in Scorpio. She's still traveling in waters that are she's unsure because she's very focused on other people, especially if it has to do with money. But Saturn's kind of anchoring her in and reminding her of a conversation they had months ago about putting her spiritual practices in her daily routines. So as both Mars and Venus, because Mars and Venus are in a beautiful aspect to one another, are aware of the idea of setting intentions, setting a, like getting in the shower and saying, today's going to be a great day. And everything that happens, I'm going to look at from Spirit's point of view and try to see over and above the everyday dynamics. I think that's interesting. We're talking to Scorpio and we end the month with the sun and the moon. The sun and Mercury, both at 8 degrees in Libra, the house of transformation and transformation of thoughts and how I see my light shine out in the world. We are heading into even more and more interesting times as we get into 2025. These are sort of precursor times. So the alignment with your inner being, with your divinity, with your oversoul, with that inner knowing that says, don't go down that path when everybody else is following that path. The honing of that skill right now will be the deciding factor in the years to come and the experiences that we all have. The awareness that our thoughts are things and that they are like magnets drawing in the people, the places, the situations, and the dynamics that support those thoughts. So if your thoughts are not aligned to happiness or to the things you want, you will experience what your thoughts are focused on. And that's where the beauty comes in, and where Venus traveling through your first house gives you opportunity to sort of take a minute. And because I love this trine here at the end, it's not tight, but Venus will be in it soon enough as we go into October. And that's a real supporting factor for the transformation of history through brave thought. Remember, Mars is your co-ruler and ruled you for a long, ancient times before Pluto got into the picture. All right, Scorpios, that's it for me for September 2024. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. And if you'd like to book a reading with me, please contact me. My information is below in the description. Please like, please subscribe, please share and comment. I appreciate all of your support. And if you'd like to join me Sunday mornings live at 11 a.m. Pacific time, that's where we get together and we look at the week ahead's transits and we get the angel's advice. We pull a tarot card and do an angel reading for each sign. All right, everybody, have a lovely September. I will see you in October.